Okay, my colleague's just chasing up the last person to see if she'll join us, and then we'll kick off. Does anybody have a hard stop at all? I know we got the session from 12 till 2 today. Does anybody have a hard stop any earlier than that? They need to get away?
You give us get a JR3 card, Andy, already.
Well, do feel free to use the chat if anybody wants to sort of raise a hand, ask any questions, interrupt. I promise not to press the mute button and try and mute anybody. This is an open session. So let me start by saying thank you all for giving the time out of your diary to join today's session. It's the first of its kind. And Axians, I'll introduce a little about Axians in a minute, but we do have an online forum that we use to communicate with technical customers, people in our community that we work with. And for a couple of years, we thought about having an online or live forum where we can get together with people from across the sector. Obviously, COVID made that a little bit difficult to do direct face-to-face. We hope in the future they will be. But for the first time, we're bringing this session as a virtual roundtable. I'll introduce Axians. We are a network and cybersecurity systems integrator. We have worked extensively across the research and education sector, not just in the UK, but overseas as well. We are part of a very large company called Vinci, and Vinci are a roughly 50 billion euro turnover organization that are investors, builders and operators of buildings and infrastructure across the world. We're in many countries across the world. Axians is the ICT brand of Vinci. We are in 27 countries. And actually, I'm one of the founder members of Axians International Education Club. So this is the UK Education Club. The International Education Club is where we get together with peers from across the world, and we talk about what we do with the education sector and how we can make things better. And the idea of today's roundtable and the continuing roundtable discussions as they come to us, it's a community group. We really want to find out where the gaps are, how we can help the education sector to deliver against some of the challenges that arise as they continue to increase, how we can work together, improve collaboration and make sure that people have an opening, a platform, if you like, that you can come and challenge people from the technology side with things that we can do to help you overcome some of the issues that you see today. I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves in a minute. Hopefully you've all received a very nice little gift box through the post. You should have some tea and some snacks and some goodies, and hopefully you've got the Axians campus guide to the Smart Campus. If anybody hasn't received that and they were expecting to, please just raise a hand or put a note in the chat, and we'll see if we can get you one sent post-event. It is informal, it's roundtable. This is not going to be full of presentations. If you don't mind putting cameras on, that's fantastic. If anybody wants to have a snack and a cup of tea during the presentation, during the roundtable, we won't judge. And you know, feel free to enjoy the goodies that were sent through to you. And it is time to collaborate. So we'll have a few themes that we're going to be talking about, but it's collaborative. It's your forum as much as it is ours. So I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Andy Butcher. I am the General Manager of Axians Public Sector Business Unit in the UK. I've had the pleasure of working with research and education for well over 20 years, largely in IT and largely around networking and cybersecurity. As part of the International Education Club, I try to get a bit broader than that. We try and think about some of the difficult challenges that are facing the community, and we see what we can do to try and meet some of those challenges. We've got Jamie Pitchforth on the line here. Jamie is from Juniper Networks. Jamie, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Andy. I do know pretty much everybody on the call actually already, which is great. So good morning to everybody. Jamie Pitchforth. I've got about 30 years experience. I started life back in 1992 at Cabletron Systems, moved on to 3Com. And then I was a joint founder of an organization called Pervasive Networks, which was how Andy and myself actually met probably 20, 25 years ago. So my role, I work for Juniper. I am head of education. I've been head of the education business for Juniper for the last 2 years. And that's for the whole of the EMEA region. And really my role has been to look at our technology and translate our technology into what does that actually mean for higher education. So really understanding what's driving investment in technology, looking at stakeholders beyond traditional IT into estates and facilities, into student services, into the executive board, and understand how the technology and the investments that you guys are making, how we can solve the problems, how we can meet the outcomes, how we can best deliver value from the network. So a lot of the work that we do is actually beyond the network. So traditional connectivity is in many ways becoming, and has been for a little while, a commodity. We're really now focused on experience, but also around service innovation, where we can use things like open API integration to bring together platforms and build constellations and services that are far richer in their capabilities, provide far richer data insight and intelligence to you as the operators, so that you can use that information and that intelligence to drive your strategies around things like student engagement, student attendance, space management, health and well-being, and a number of other key areas. So I have a lot of experience over the last 30 years doing that, and it's lovely to meet everybody again. Thanks, Andy.
Did that mute thing. Thank you, Jamie. June, would you mind just introducing yourself so that everybody sees who we got from Axians today, and then we'll move on to the attendees.
Okay, cool. My name is June Chapman. I am the Axians account manager for higher education and research. Hopefully today I will be able to listen to you guys and be able to kind of understand what it is that I can do to support you in the journeys. I'm taking notes throughout, so hopefully from this I'll be able to support people better and do more to help.
Thank you, June. Okay, let's start off with attendees then. If you don't mind, I'm going to just go through the alphabetical order in which people have joined. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself first? Tell us where you come from.
Yeah, hi, afternoon everybody. My name's Alex Israel. I'm an IT solution architect at the University of Plymouth. I work in our infrastructure team. So the infrastructure team here deals with network, servers, telephony, data center and the like. I spend the vast majority of my time these days. We've got an estates master plan that's a couple of years into sort of a 7-year life cycle. So I spend a lot of time on the estates buildings and sort of all the new smart building aspects that people keep dreaming up. And then sort of my priority at the moment is we're 6 years into our current 5 to 7 year network life cycle. So I've been spending some time with Jamie recently, looking at options on the table and what we should do next, moving forward into the future.
Excellent. Hopefully this little brochure here will be useful to you.
Nice and blurred out like it's copyright.
Got it right there. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Ayla, could I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Ayla Smart from the University of Sheffield. I'm a space manager, so not particularly IT focused, unfortunately, but I'm always willing to learn. We have got a lot of projects at the moment looking at agile working, particularly bringing people back post pandemic. So we're really interested in understanding how IT systems and digital networks can help us with that task, really.
Excellent. No, it's great to have people from different lines of business. Yeah, we are all IT people. There's no doubt about that. But IT is an enabler, let's hope, to some of the challenges you have around space management. That's a hot topic. We have a lot of people talking about that. So that's great. Thank you. Kay.
think I've got connectivity now, so it's good that we're with all you IT gurus
Hey,
when I'm so rubbish
perfectly.
at it. So I work with Ayla. I'm the head of strategic space management at the University of Sheffield, and our role is really to make sure that the university's estate is fit for function and it's the right size and shape for the activity that we are undertaking. Like Ayla said, we're doing a lot of work at the moment around agile working, or what they term now as hybrid working, and getting colleagues back into the university, and really interested to see what support can be given through monitoring systems and desk booking systems, things like that, to help us actually deliver those initiatives.
Excellent.
So glad to be
That's
here.
great. Thank you very much. Kevin.
Yep, Kevin Mortimer, University of Reading, Head of Operations. I look after all the IT infrastructure ultimately here, so from our network, our cloud estate, and I've been quite pleased that we're one of the first ones to look at Juniper Mist as to implement the Wi-Fi 6 and BLE capability across all of our campuses. So that's something I'm quite interested in pursuing further and getting some of the value that we've now created by enabling that.
Excellent, thanks, Kevin. And hopefully we've got some topics today and some discussions to share experience, and everybody can benefit from those. All right, so we set a fairly loose agenda. We wanted to talk today about some of the things like student experience and space management. These are very important factors for everybody, and it's not just about student experience, it's experience for all, whether they're researchers, staff, alumni, all kinds of things. And we've got evidence of projects that have been carried out across the globe to make successful inroads into to optimizing things like space management and student experience. Want to talk a little bit about cybersecurity, hybrid working, of course, getting people back into the office, but also enabling remote learning and remote access for staff as well as students. I'm sure Jamie will talk more about the Juniper and Mist solution and how that can help to deal with some of the challenges that we see. So I wanted to start particularly by asking, every institution appears to be on some kind of journey of digitalisation, modernisation, transformation, and possibly even moving towards a smart campus, as we discussed earlier. So I want to ask what various club members think this means in terms of requirements from the network. And so I know some of you aren't directly IT related, but I'm sure you understand that the network is the thing that connects things together. So just wanted to get views from across the room really on what this means. What's the requirement from the network in order to deliver this modernisation transformation that you're facing today? Who'd like to offer some insight?
Let's drop Kevin into the hot seat.
Thanks, Jamie. Okay, so hybrid working, networking experience. I think so. A lot of universities, my impression of this is that we've been very static in terms of how we've been operating from network provision for a long time. Most of us introduced Wi-Fi in the last sort of 5 to 10 years across the estate, but I think a lot of our customers still had desktop devices still wired in, and so the actual usage didn't really change that much. It was more about the student experience and giving them access to things. It's interesting now that the world has suddenly become very, but the networking in particular, I'm finding, has become very more corporate in terms of what the approach is. And I come from outside the sector before joining the university 5 years ago, from the private sector, and I was quite surprised in how traditional the networking world was here. It's been a long 5 years trying to modernise a lot of that actually and get that ways of thinking. A lot of it's down to the cost of change and timing of that. And our Juniper Mist refresh came along because we had an Aruba estate that we had to replace because the controllers were end of life. That's the driver behind it, and just happened to kind of coincide with this new technology. So yeah.
And what do you think it is about your investment in new technology on the network, Kevin, that's going to be the change enabler for the modernisation, the transformation? We're talking about topics like space management and student experience. What are the things that the network will give you, do you think, that will enable that change?
Yes, it's completely the agility to allow us to to be a lot more flexible and working. So we used to be very traditional, stuck in offices, and but the force around hybrid to allow us to look at space differently and have even our finance team, for example, just they've always been sat in the same offices for years, or actually, and haven't been able to move out there because the certain applications are firewall restricted to get to things. We're actually implementing clear paths to help sit alongside that, so then they can actually go work wired or wireless anywhere on campus, and it's that flexibility of use, which it's a big change in experience, but it's what a lot of organizations have been doing for quite a long time. So we might just be behind the times compared to my peers on here, maybe. I don't know.
So certainly mobility, flexibility,
it's,
enabling people to use space better rather than being fixed in one place that they can't move.
I think that's the driver. I mean, we still think about network very traditionally, and we try and change that mindset. But actually, we're using the student kind of experience to try to suggest to staff that maybe they could look at that same experience and work differently as well. But trying to change institutionalization, the culture is really challenging, and so I'm hoping, and it's still just a hope, that we can actually be able to benefit from some of the investment we've had in Juniper Mist technology, but actually taking advantage of the capabilities that the Bluetooth beacon, for example, has brought in. Still early days, but it's just trying to get the right person to want to invest in that capability. It was an enabler, but I don't know. It's a change. It's a changing world, and I think there's so much change going on at the moment that how people engage with the network is probably not really on the top of the priority. They just expect it to work, and but even at home in lockdown, I changed my network at home from just being a standalone router to implementing a mesh-based system just to improve the performance across that. And I think a lot of that stuff is happening, and people are just focusing on those different things now.
Yeah.
Andy, can I ask Kevin a question, please?
Far away.
Okay, thank you. So, Kevin, I'm curious to understand, in terms of, let's take the subject of space management. How does the University of Reading manage their spaces today? And then once you've moved through and evolved and matured with your digital strategy, how do you see space management evolving, and what will that look like tomorrow? What's the vision? So, we kind of get it from both ends of the spectrum. Traditional, how you've been doing it.
So, space is very static. It's always been used by the same schools and departments, the same activity year on year, same functions. And whilst we've had some building works going on, it still hasn't really changed how space has been used in those areas. We're really fortunate that we have such a large green campus that actually space utilization isn't as financially stretched as it would be in, say, a London university, where you can't just go and build a building on the land next to you because there's no space next to you to build that. So we don't have that challenge, but the university has actually realized that we can actually make some money by leasing out some buildings to other organizations now. So that's actually what's driving a lot of the change. Some of there's a couple of buildings around campus that we are closing for university use and subletting, whether it's at the NHS or whether it's to other education groups and other organizations like that. It does vary. So there's educational focus around that subletting, but that's kind of the focus. So let's force them to actually look at how we're now using the space. And so they're now coming to us and saying, okay, we want to condense a 40-seat office that finance might be sat into a 20-seat office, because we want to put HR in there as well. So what can we do about that? So it's forcing to think about that. Still thinking about very much as static desks there. That's the challenge. And I'm trying to. So I'm just a Teams call. Trying to change how they're looking at it. I mean, ultimately, we want to get to the point where the timetabling platform can look at space in terms of what the capacity needs to be for that. And be flexible to allow that to move around, and then actually using the capability of the network to actually some of the attendance management. So actually make sure if you're using a 20-seater seminar room and make sure there are actually people using it, as 20 people using it on a regular basis. If it's not, then maybe you could look at a slightly smaller space and shuffle those bits around, be a bit more dynamic with it all. Everything's kind of planned for the year, and it stays that way. It's only when you have like a building flood where you have to shut the whole building that you have the panic stations. Oh crap, where are we going to put these people now? So it's really interesting to see how that dynamic's going to change. But I think but creating the ability to be flexible is going to then kind of help people be flexible. But when we haven't been able to be flexible in the past, it's kind of forced them to be traditional in terms of their approach as well. And we are still quite early in that space sort of management journey as well. It doesn't. We've got a new director. We have a new director of estates as well, which is kind of we've been waiting to kind of help come in and challenge, if you like, where it's been sort of treading water for a while until we're in that position. It hasn't helped as well.
So I'm hearing there that you'd like to tie your space management with your timetabling system so that you can make sure you're allocating the right spaces at the right time for people.
And even to whole buildings as well, though, Andy. So you're looking at how the BMS interacts with that as well. So actually you can shut whole buildings down and save power and heating costs, etc. By being able to lock buildings sooner if there's nobody in them. And actually all those green initiatives that we're all trying to support as well, that all ties into that as well. And it's kind of
sustainability targets.
It's all a bit chicken and egg as well, if you like.
Yeah, for sure. Really interested to hear from the ladies from Sheffield about what you believe the network does for you, can do for you. You're not IT, but equally, you must understand that there's this connectivity stuff there. In terms of your space management strategy, particularly, but ongoing transformation for the university, which part do you feel the network plays in that? And are you thinking about network as you're trying to evolve your space management strategy?
That's really interesting, Andy, and I was really interested to hear what Kevin said, because quite frankly, I don't think about the network. To me, it's there and it happens, and I think that is probably what Kevin's space manager will think, and everyone else's will, because it's just an enabler to us. So space management, as far as we're concerned, is more about the workplace culture, making sure that you've got effective and efficient space for people to work in, that they're in vibrant workspaces so that we get the best out of people. To us, it's not about the IT connectivity at all. So that is really interesting. I feel like I'm a bit of an interloper on your call now.
No, not at all.
Can I ask something there, Andy, though, actually, because that's interesting. So how do you manage, if there's your user requirements of the space, how do those requirements get translated into the IT space to understand what might need to change there? Because we kind of get it like last minute, like we've been planning this for the last 2 years, and that's something we've got to finish change. So it'd be interesting to sort of see how you engage with your technical comments into your technology space.
So there's actually a lot of churn in institutions. So, you may think like your institutions don't do much and people don't move around, but actually they do, because there's people moving all the time. It might just be small pockets, or it's not always big developments that we do, although we've got quite a few of those at the moment. I mean, we're a fully Wi-Fi enabled internal, external campus. So if we're actually moving people around, the connectivity regarding plugging your device in really doesn't come down to the IT services per se. We would look at where the electrical points are so that we can make sure that people can get a charge. Because we're fully Wi-Fi and we know that's there, and that's pretty stable, fortunately. We're a Google institution, so all of our apps are Google based. I don't know if that makes a difference, but I know that we shout about it quite a lot. And I know that when we're looking at new applications for things like desk monitoring, then our IT services will go straight to the Google applications to see if there's something there that's suitable before they look elsewhere. So yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, being as you all are IT, but I don't really.
Well, no, that's really good feedback, and I would flip it around, okay, and I would say, what are IT doing for you in terms of space management?
So we've had quite a few workshops with them recently regarding, particularly with us looking at hybrid systems, the desk monitoring systems. So like Kevin was mentioning, that you want to know how many people are in certain places. Our teaching spaces are monitored not by anything electrical. We have people go around and look at them and count bodies, basically, each academic session, which is very labour intrusive. but still works out a lot cheaper than having the monitors and paying for the software to run those reports from. So that's why we still do it like that. And I think a lot of institutions still do that as well. We only do that on our teaching space. We don't do it on our academic space. That's not, we don't do utilisation surveys in the same way on those. So from my perspective, what would be fantastic is if we saw the footfall in certain areas and that desks were actually in use when we think they're in use. And I think this is the way that we will be pushing it, because we were predominantly open plan for professional service type departments, which IT services and estates will fall into. We'd like to make sure that the desks that are in those spaces are actually being used. And if they're not being used, that they're available for other people to come and book into them as well. We know that there are desk management systems like that out in the big wide world, because, you know, we're really late to this party. In the commercial sector, desk booking's been a thing for at least the past 10 years, if not longer. So that's where we're sort of focusing our attention, because we think that will be a real positive for bringing people back into the office so that they can just log on and say, right, I want to book this desk today, and I'd like that desk because I know that my colleague's going to be sat near me and I'll be able to interact with them. And then if they don't come and use it, the desk goes back into the system for reallocation. That's what we'd like to see. Our IT services are struggling to come back with anything that is what we think we can achieve.
So you mentioned a couple of interesting things there. You talked about footfall as well as desk management. Kevin, carry on.
No, I was just going to start. It's interesting. I'm really curious to understand. A lot of it depends on what products and services how you're defined, and how your IT teams are managing the security of those sections, for example. Because we've had a lot of problems historically with such a big flat network with very little authentication actually on that, and how your team have adapted the security posture of the network access layer to allow you to have that flexibility. Because what you're saying is exactly what we're trying to get to, but we've got a huge void to fill first, to make sure that people are only connected to the network at the appropriate time, accessing the data they should be accessing, all those security posture pieces. So we're really interested to kind of to understand how your IT team have actually fixed that problem to allow you to be in the position that you're in, because it's kind of where I'm trying to get to. So it's really curious.
And unfortunately, I'm not the person to tell you, because I have absolutely no idea. All I know is that it happens.
And I'm interested to hear, you did mention footfall and you did mention desks, booking a desk and that kind of thing. And what information do you get that informs you to repurpose a space?
Generally, we will repurpose a space if a department tells us that they're no longer. So in space allocation, all of the space at the university is allocated to a function. So it's either allocated to an academic department, professional services department, or it's allocated to estates if it's things like corridors, risers, that sort of activity. So all space is allocated somewhere. We don't have vacant space sat empty unless it's waiting to be refurbished or to be sold on. So we're actually quite efficient in that way. If someone comes to us and say, right, this building's got problems, it's, the conditions deteriorating, we need to do a refurbishment project, then we'll put a project plan together and we'll move people out whilst we go in and do that refurbishment. And at that point in time, we might do some remodelling to make it fit for purpose.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Yes. I mean, I get to see some very interesting spaces. In fact, I was just saying to Alex, I was over in Portugal a few weeks ago, seeing one of our customers out there who they built a new campus. So greenfield's always lovely, isn't it? Because you can take all of those ideas and you can put them into place without any of the legacy challenges that you had previously. And space management is really, really important to them, and repurposing space. And actually, one of the things that they do is they take feedback from students, from lecturers, from anybody that's walking around the building. Because they do find that there are spaces, maybe not allocated lecture rooms, but spaces that aren't being utilised. And that's one of the best enablers for them to change. Because if they can, I mean, you mentioned footfall, they want to be able to see where people are congregating, how long it takes for them to move from one space to another, where, given the freedom of choice, they prefer to be over other places. And is it because the resources are suitable in those places? Is it because it's got some nice windows out to the ocean this one is actually by the ocean, or you know, is it for another reason, you know, and so understanding why people are using which spaces informs change, you know, because they can react, they can respond to that if they find that spaces aren't being well utilised. I want to move on to Alex, actually, if you don't mind, just to get Alex's opinion on this. I think this is a good discussion. Let's keep on with this. But Alex, thinking about the network, how is the network going to be an enabler for you for transformation? We've started talking about spaces quite a lot, but in other areas as well. What's the network's role?
So I think it's quite interesting, because I guess we're a bit of a mix of where Kevin is and where the ladies are. We manage space currently by employing students to walk around and do a snapshot of, you know, general teaching spaces, and that's how it is. When COVID happened and we didn't want to employ people and we were trying to keep less people on, people started shouting, saying, well, there must be another way. And we were like, well, we've been shouting for a number of years that, you know, logically we have Wi-Fi access points everywhere. We can give you quite quickly a rough snapshot of what devices are in a building, and then sort of estates and our space management team. What do you mean you can do that? And you know, with basic, you know, we've only got sort of older generation Cisco controllers, but quite quickly we were like, well, we know where an access point is. We know there's these people connected to it. We can tell you there's 10
Roughly,
people, you know,
yeah,
roughly in that kind of area or within this building. And they said, no, there's nobody in that building. And we're like, well, within the center of that building, there are 10 devices connected. And security went and had a look. And there were people in there having a meeting where they shouldn't be. And they turned around and they sent them home and they said, you know, you're not allowed to be on campus. You know, we're in lockdown. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden we feel as though you've got some information there that you can, you know, you can give us. We trialed DNA spaces from Cisco, and sort of started looking at that, and sort of some of the information that came out, I don't think our access points were quite positioned quite well enough to give us really more accurate, as much accurate information as we really wanted. But you know, if we looked and invested further down that road, I'm sure it could. So we were on that balance, and now we're getting to this next stage. A bit, as Kevin says, we would like to get to hybrid working. We have the issue, I don't know how the ladies have overcome it. We still have IP telephones, so hard desks, pretty much hard lines on people's desks over the network. But you know, somebody needs to plug that in, so you can go and sit wherever you want with your laptop. But people with PCs and such still want a network socket. So we have many a problem, as Kevin says. Last minute requests of estates have said, oh, we're going to move 8 people into that office over there because the square meterage is correct, but there's only 2 network sockets in there because it used to be a seminar room and 6 of them don't have any connection. They can use their laptops and they're connected to Wi-Fi, that's fine, but they're like, oh, I want to make a phone call, or I've got a PC. And we say, well, you know, slightly out of luck. So yes, the generation moving into sort of new builds where, yes, right, okay, new builds we're not going to give every academic, because again, what we're finding is academics aren't necessarily coming back. Students are coming back, want some more space. And historically, some of our older buildings where you were a certain level academic, so you got your own office, is kind of coming to the stage where, well, you're only using that office once a week now. You're going to have to start moving into a hybrid office where we'd like you to share 6 to 8 to an office. Actually, you only all come in 1 day a week anyway, so there's only ever 2 or 3 people in that office, but it's far better use of space of 8 individual offices where they're not being used and they're locked because they're still keys and people won't share their keys. So we move to the new builds. We say, right, okay, we're gonna, you know, the IT department and our finance department have moved during lockdown. Our building has been refurbished. We're still a little bit tied down to the problem of saying, right, well, our Aggresso finance system is online. From a firewall policy and such thing, we want to be able to, you know, that's only accessible in certain IP ranges. So you need a hardwired connection. But, you know, we've got the same problem as Kevin is trying to establish there. We want to be able to have a role-based access where, yes, somebody is only getting the right access they want, they can get that, whether it's wired or wireless, or whether they are working from home and there's not necessarily a VPN connection required. But yeah, I guess this is.
So I guess the network is giving you the opportunity, and you know, I think COVID's accelerated some of these things. It's forced us to think about home working. It's forced us to think about hot desk, repurposing spaces, sharing spaces, and also about how you get access to the right level of secure access to the applications where previously that access was secured by your physical location. We've had to think about a lot of those things. And I think COVID has enabled a lot of thought to go into that. I know, Kevin, particularly, you know, you've moved just about everything to the cloud, perhaps ahead of COVID, which gave you the chance to deliver flexibility very, very quickly. You know, that I think was one of the greatest pieces of foresight that you had, wasn't it? One was to enable everything on Teams, and two, to move everything to the cloud. For a lot of other people, they've had to play catch up a little bit in that respect.
Yeah, so we moved to Teams telephony 2 weeks after we went to lockdown, because we'd done all the groundwork. We're gathering requirements. In the end, we just flicked everyone over. We had a legacy analog PBX, so we had to make the change, and that project had been underway for quite a few years, to be fair. So we're right at the tail end of it, fortunately. I actually have a question for Alex there, actually, and it just slipped my mind. So when you start talking about being able to look at the network, wireless network, and see who was where and what anew, and particularly around sort of students, I think, as well. How did your DPO react? Because when we were looking to replace our Wi-Fi, we asked the question, well, we said that when it's no different to what we can currently do. We can see where everybody is on the network already. And the fear on our DPO's face when I said that took a few months of chocolate to convince that it was okay. It's normal to see where people are on your network. So I'm interested to see if you had a similar experience or not.
We had exactly the same thing. They were like, you cannot have that information. That is, you know, you cannot enable that. You need to turn it off straight away. That is, you know, not a thing. And it was like, well, actually, it's
impossible.
Turn off. There's not. And actually, you know, I guess we flipped it around a little bit from security reasons and, you know, our JISC and our Janet requirements of actually we need to know who does what on our network. And, you know, from that purpose, we need to know where they are at that point. And they said, oh, all right, yeah, you probably do need to know that, don't you? And then the same health and safety of, oh, you know, people are alone working in buildings. We need to know these. And it took some talking down. They didn't want tracking, and you know, they certainly, you know, when we looked at it, we started with a sales point of, oh, we can tell when somebody's walking past the coffee shop and start advertising some offers, and they went, well, no, this is an invasion of privacy. This is Big Brother gone too far. You can't do that. But then
we always find that if you switch the vocabulary, instead of use the word tracking, use the word locating.
Yeah,
because locating serves a purpose. Tracking seems to be Big Brother.
Yeah,
and actually those two things are very different. But a lot of the data that you gather can be completely independent of whoever it is. You don't need to know who the user is. No. You just need to know it's a device connected in a certain location, which means there's a body there. It doesn't necessarily need to be the identifier person. And so you got some DPO kind of flexibility there, I suppose.
That's what we ended up doing. We ended up running reports out of Cisco Prime, and then having to sort of throw them through an Excel spreadsheet to delete usernames, and then forward them onto security, and just sort of make them aware that at X points, you know, these are where devices were connected. I guess nobody was expecting COVID at the time. It took a little bit of putting together, whereby we had to print out, because I guess it just gives you an AP name of where somebody is, and we've thrown out lots of printouts to security saying, right, well, this is where those access points are named within a building. That's where they're connected, and I think it was probably a bit of a game of Cluedo for them, going, right, okay, so and so in the library on this floor. But yeah, it worked for them for that time, because again, we looked at, and I'm sure many others did at the time, of right, well, let's put heat scanning cameras and monitors at the entrance to every building. And I'm sure many companies were delighted, and maybe those in private sectors or shops that needed to stay open for business, that they spent a lot of money. We deemed pretty quick that actually, well, we don't know how long lockdowns are going to last. Let's roll back, and we've still, I guess we're over 2 years later now. We've not really got to anything, and we've got to a comfortable position where, I'm sure with many others, we put loads of stickers on the floor and please stay 2 meters away, and those kind of things. And it worked enough for security, but it has left that. We were, I think Kevin mentioned earlier on, that the network is, as I was told by our CFO recently, your network is not very sexy. I can't touch it, nobody sees it, and I just expect it to work. Sky come along.
That's your fault, because it does work then, isn't it? You're saying.
Well, this is the slight problem, is what it works. I think Kay said, our Wi-Fi, we're very fortunate that it works quite well around the campus. Now her IT department are probably working flat out constantly making sure that is the case, and Kay may have more of input or knowledge of such thing. If it didn't work fairly often and people were complaining, then it's more of a discussion, and that's the problem. And we ended up with our last network refresh, whereby we done traditional networking. We bought a network in 2005. We made it last 10 years, and the last 2 or 3 years of it was creaking at the knees, and the case where it's going to be a little bit 50-50 whether you get an IP address here and you can, there's enough capacity on our files for you to access websites, or it's going to be a bit slow. And then as soon as people started noticing that, it was like, well, why is it? And we were like, well, for 2 years we've been asking for this business case to spend a load of money, but you kept saying no. So,
and that's an interesting one, is that actually what we can learn most from is bad experiences. But if the network's always up, we can't learn much from it. Okay, we can gather data from it, but we can't learn when people are having a bad experience. Similarly, one of my daughters is at university at the moment, and if there are problems on the Wi-Fi network, she calls me. Now, I can do so much to help, because she immediately thinks that it's a problem with her laptop. It invariably is, actually, but this is a common thing, that the students are going to tell each other. They're going to tell their parents, but they're not going to report it necessarily. But actually, if you've got, yes, thanks, Kevin. My daughter is at University of Reading, so so she does complain to me. But I think that's a common thing, that students won't necessarily report the issues, but you can learn so much from bad experiences that inform you how to improve it. We've heard about quite a few interesting things there, and Ada and Kay, I'd like to ask, what from a data privacy point of view, do you consider that when you're thinking about space management? Do you consider that when you're thinking about, if I were to gather some feedback here, I could perhaps be a little more dynamic in the way that we allocate spaces? Has that crossed your minds, thinking about the data protection side of things?
I can't say it has, but it's certainly something that we think about now. Ayla and I have just been chatting to each other online, saying, I wonder where we get that information from. I know we've got to go to get it. So certainly we'll be asking that question of our IT services. It would be interesting to know. And certainly one of our big stances at the moment is actually we're wanting to reduce our footprint. So rather than continuing to build and refurbish, we're going to be looking to refurbish and grow within our existing footprint where we possibly can. And that's only a problem if the buildings obviously can't support that sort of infrastructure requirements, and then we'll look at a new development. But in order to do that, we need to be able to demonstrate that people are not using the spaces, which is what you were both really indicating earlier, and that information would be incredibly useful for us to be able to do that, if nothing else. The data protection side of it, everyone at the university has to do the courses to make sure that you are savvy on data protection and things. I don't think it actually goes much further than that in the outside world to IT services. I think it's IT services and academic registrar's office who have really got the focus on that area, not necessarily the estate side of it.
Yeah, I think it's something that seems to rear its head quite a lot. I know that a couple of years ago, I was involved in some projects with GISC where they were looking at learning analytics. And learning analytics was gathering data from the virtual learning environment and the library attendance. And it was kind of putting some analytics around it to say, if you spend this much time in the library and this much time on the VLE, you're going to end up with this pass grade here. And if you spend less, you're going to, and so on and so on. And it didn't grind to a complete halt. But one of the things that really disturbed people was ethics and privacy. Was, you know, what data are you gathering, and is that an ethical thing to do? And you know, what puzzled me was, well, surely if you're informing the student to perform better and you're giving them something that is supporting their chances of greater success, then would they not want that? And there was a lot of discussion around ethics and privacy, and I think data privacy is very, very important. And as I say, sometimes you can just anonymize and you just can say it's a device. I'm gathering data around a device, locating to make sure that we're using our spaces and we're looking at things like dwell time, travel time, and so on to make better use of the resources that we've got. I also, one of the things that you picked up on earlier on there, Alex, was talking about lone worker safety and extending student safety as well. And I think that is something that the network can also enable once you've got, I mean, three critical things for me when you're trying to provide better utilization of resources is time, identity, and location. Time is fairly obvious. If you can identify something or someone and you know where they are, then you can do an awful lot. So for a lone worker environment, for instance, if you know that there's a lone worker in a certain place and you expect them to be moving around and they suddenly don't move around, there are certain applications that you can buy. There are certain things that you can do that trigger an alarm, and somebody can go and investigate that. If somebody has one of these call buttons where actually there has been a problem and they can press a button, it can be quickly located and you can send somebody there as a first responder to deal with it, whether that's a first aid incident or a fire incident or whatever. So we know that there are things like that that are available, but actually bringing together some of those technologies, actually, the more data you're gathering from different data points. I did say a little while ago to a customer when we were talking about smart campus, actually, the difference between a digital campus where you've got lots of digitally enabled devices connected and a smart campus. Smart means you use the data that you harvest from those devices to inform better decisions, to make, you know, as I said earlier, bad experiences inform better than good experiences, because that's when you hear what things shouldn't be like. And so as we develop things like lone worker solutions over the years, first responder solutions, space management solutions, all of these things have come about because somebody somewhere has gathered some data. And for me, the network is a critical enabler for that, because the network, done right, can give you time, location, identity, and give you the information to base those decisions on. And I know, you know, Kevin, you've invested in the Juniper Mist solution, which is all Bluetooth enabled. So ladies that not from IT, what that means is it's all about accuracy. So certain different types of technology will give you different accuracy over location. So you're probably familiar on your handheld devices, you'll have GPS and you'll have Wi-Fi, and they'll give you accuracy down to 5 meters, maybe 10 meters. Bluetooth will give you accuracy down to between 1 and 3 meters. And so we use Bluetooth for connecting, you know, AirPods to laptops and so on, because it's a short distance, but equally we use Bluetooth to locate people much more accurately. And we've seen this used, for instance, in environments where during COVID, you know, people have said there's only 3 people or 6 people allowed in this office. And by using Bluetooth, you can accurately see how many people are in a meeting room, and you can raise an alarm if suddenly there are too many people in there. Not commonly used, but those are the kind of things that Bluetooth can enable because of its accuracy. Kevin, you're on mute.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I would, I'd actually tried to move away from sort of looking at how many people are in there and actually turn out how it can add value to the university. Because a lot of challenges that I've come across is if it was around that space manager and people looking at it more with the Big Brother lens. And whenever you talk about seeing how many people are in an area, they always get, oh, people they're watching us. But I think the real way to kind of sell it is, if you, as one of the examples earlier, is like you walking past the coffee shop, there's nobody in there, you can ping a discount code to that person and say, if you go to buy a coffee now, there's nobody in here, we'll give you 10% off. That's 10% of less money you're going to get, but you're going to get the extra probably 30% of margin that you still make on that brew, if you like. And you can really help us drive that. Other things like students walking past the library, it pings you got a book due back tomorrow. If you have it with you, when you drop it in now, otherwise you might get a fine or those sort of things. It's trying to make it enhance experience rather than necessarily use it as a tracking capability.
And that's what I say, locating is more important than tracking. Kay, you got your hand up.
Yeah, we've looked at Bluetooth initiatives for occupancy surveys, and one of the things that came back to us loud and clear from other institutions who have tried it is that actually the accuracy is quite poor because students and staff will have multiple devices. So, we've all got a mobile phone, we've got Bluetooth, lots of us carry iPads, laptops, and so on and so on. And students may have multiple phones as well on top of that. So, it's more about the accuracy of how many people it actually finds from one person.
Yeah,
it's a real. Sorry, Andy, I'm going to go.
No, carry on, Kevin.
You want the Roundtable? There you go. No, it's a real. Billy is a real nightmare, and if it's not the advantage of integrating to the APs is why we kind of really got interested about it. Is that where those APs are, and you can put actual virtual beacons around that space, put over the top of a door or in certain locations, so you can get a little more detail, and you haven't got the headache of traditional BLE devices where you've got to go and change the batteries every couple of years and how you engage them. It's a real pain in the ass, if I'm honest, which is why we've looked at BLE before and not gone that way. I would certainly have a conversation with Jamie and Axians about what the Juniper product does, because I think that will give you confidence. Actually, it will help because you can see when the Wi-Fi perspective that device is, you can see what the devices are from a Bluetooth perspective, and it ties it all together. But I'm sure they'll do a better job of selling it than me.
I think the challenge there, Kay, is around one of the things that I mentioned. I said time, location, identity. So if you are just seeing X number of devices, you're right. That's of limited use to you. That's not the kind of information that's going to be very rewarding. If you know more about the devices that are connecting, and you for instance know that, okay, there's a student, it's the same person, 3 devices, I'm only going to count that as one body. It's how you use that data. I think that's the important thing. And where it's a little raw, where it's just counting devices, that's not great. You need to be able to distinguish between devices and users. I suppose one of the things that fascinated me, Axians has, we carry out the head count in Venice. And I don't know if you've ever been to Venice, but there is a huge problem with pedestrian blockages, basically, as people want to walk across the bridges and get to Smart Square. They, in certain times of the year, and particularly when they've got the Mars Festival, it just gets full up, and they have to police people. And so they've got systems there that can distinguish between a person, a dog, a child, and a piece of luggage. It's down to the intelligence of the system that's gathering the data. Because actually, it doesn't matter that person's carrying a piece of luggage or that's a dog, because they're going to squeeze in with the people. You obviously can't divide them up. And so it's how you gather the intelligence and what you do with that, I think, is the important factor. So where it's a little bit broad brush, where it's a little raw and it's just counting devices, not all that intelligent, get a bit more accurate about it and tie it through to identity as well. And that will inform you far more. But I think that those are interesting parts of it. In your role in space management, do you look after things like first responder security, or is that an IT thing? Is that Alex and Kevin? Is that something that you do? Who considers those kind of parts of it?
They're not part of ours.
They're not.
I do kind of have a question from observation. How often do you collaborate with different parts of the university to kind of understand what each department can kind of cross-reference? Like IT, would you automatically go and speak to those guys like a couple of times a week, or
on demand, or how does it work?
yeah, how do you actually communicate with different parts of the university to try and get the things that you need?
From my perspective, at Plymouth, estates and space management and IT have a love-hate relationship. We talk maybe when required. It's an ever-changing landscape.
You say talk, Alex. Is it talk, or is it more like direct?
Yeah, direct is where we've been recently. It's terrible, and it's slightly like for me, how can I put it? Like schoolyard politics. Logically, we should all be sitting here aiming for the best student experience with one university pot of money to do the best with that we can. In reality, my boss sits and shouts as loud as he can to get an IT related product, and the estates director sits and shouts as loud as he can to get as much money as she can. We don't necessarily work together that well currently. I'm hoping, COVID and such thing, and as showing that, from an IT perspective, we can actually do things to assist you, and that, they're trying to, present business cases that state the word, we're going to deliver a smart building, and, without showing them up too much within a space, saying your smart building's not going to be very smart if it's not connected to a network, because you're not going to see anything. Only 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, to be fair, we built a new building. It was off campus. It was slightly in partnership with a science park and the NHS, so it was a little bit hit and miss. We delivered a network. They separately delivered a BMS solution. Day one, they said, great news, we can't see the BMS from main campus. It was like, okay, what BMS are you talking about? Well, the BMS we've installed at the building. What's it connected to? No, it's got its own network. Okay, so you've installed a load of little home hubs and a load of separate Cat5 cabling, and it's not connected to anything. And you'd like to understand why you can't see it from 10 miles down the road. And it was as silent as it was as silent as this room at that point. And we went, okay, what IP addresses has got? 192.168.0.1 and then 2 and then 3. Oh, okay. It's not going to work. And since then we've showed them up a little bit. They weren't happy. We're building, but we are,
So
Thank you. I just want to
say, place. Sorry, Andy. Go on.
I just want to say welcome to Kerry, who's just joined us. Kerry, you've just joined at an interesting time where we're talking about collaboration between IT and estates departments, and in fact all other departments, and how we get along and how we collaborate and make sure that we're helping each other to a common goal. So thank you for joining. Hopefully you'll have something to join in with this conversation as we go through. That's Alex's IT perspective on things, but Kevin.
It's exactly mirror image. I mean, the organisation created a science park, a mile or two south of where we are, and they didn't want to engage with us because it was a private commercial venture. It wasn't something to do with the university really. It was run by a different part of the team, and then they realized that they couldn't see any CCTV and they couldn't log into any PCs, and suddenly they needed to put a VPN between two sites. It's like, look, we did ask and you still just go away. So, but no, I mean, the issue we've really had with our estates team, and we still have quite a lot of that, is a lot of it, to be fair, is they are still trying, I'll say they are, but they are still trying to deliver services as if it was in like the 2000 or before. They haven't adapted or changed how they deliver things. They still do aircon the same way, still do data cabling in the exact same way. Okay, they might use different cables, but it's still approach it the same way. And these, a lot of people have been in the organisation for quite a long time. They'd always done it a certain way. They were all coming towards retirement as well, so didn't really care too much either. They just wanted the easy life, and that was for them just doing what they've always done. So we're starting to have a real transformation now, where we've got a new director for estates started just a few months ago. The maintenance director has also started within the estates team, who's going to completely really shake all that up and remove that legacy thinking. I think that's one of the things that really holds us back. So when we next go to install a building, they're not going to put a lift in that requires an analog cable to go for the lift alarm. They're going to look at doing something like a GSM unit or an IP-based system instead, because we're refusing to support any analog going forwards. But we had to really be quite firm with that. And but yeah, it's changing, but they are maturing their mindset. But it's really struggling. So it's really interesting to kind of see the different world of estates from like lens from the K and state. Really.
And I think Alex said you've all got the common goal, haven't you, of
Exactly.
largely making the student experience better. Kerry, yours is going to be more about the researchers' experience as well, I'm sure, at the University of Leeds. So, ladies, let's throw the table open again. We talked a little bit about the relationship between IT and other departments and how often you talk and how we help to reach common goals. Opinions from around the table.
I don't mind. Yeah, we have very similar situations to both Alex and Kevin, really. I think a lot of it depends on the size of the project as well. So on some of the bigger new builds, then IT colleagues are involved right from the start, or at least they should be. Some of the smaller projects, it can be a little bit hit and miss depending on which colleagues you're speaking to and which departments and things. But yeah, like yourself, Kevin, we've had a new IT director in for about 18 months now, and she's been approved some quite large sums of money for modernising the IT infrastructure across campus. So hopefully things can only get better.
I guess a lot of times it's about understanding each other's challenges, understanding each other's pains and being sympathetic with them. And I think that's part of the problem. We work in silos. In every organisation, this isn't just public sector. In every organisation, we work in silos. We think about our budget. We think about the things that we're trying to achieve. And we don't often think of the bigger picture. We don't collaborate together necessarily to find out, what's got to be done where, and how will the benefit of somebody spending some money over here be a benefit to you as well. And perhaps,
Andy, I think
thinking about the larger strategy.
It is the money though. I mean, and so the way we in the IT function are funded is very different to estates. So estates have a very minimal maintenance budget, which gets cut every year to keep the same services running. But then they don't actually have any budget for staff or salaries, so they have to charge into departments for all of the work they do. Whereas we have a model in DTS. We have a set budget for all of that, and we just have to make it all work. So we don't have to cross charge as much to things. But estates have to cross charge, I think. And as soon as you start charging things, people expect certain different services, and particularly from the service culture that I've come from before as well, I expect that if I'm paying something, I expect it to happen. I expect it to be a good value. It means paying $7,500 to have a door swipe put on a door to replace a key lock, is played down robbery, but we and then it takes them 6 months to do it. It's like, this is ridiculous. Or we have to use ADT as a supplier, and because of the outsourcing that's happened in the past, because the budget's been slashed, it has to be the fixed cost, and it's really challenging. So I do have some sympathy for the estates team, to be fair, that we work with, but it's just trying to mature the organisation. But we are a business.
Thanks,
we need to be seen that way.
Kerry, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Andy. So I'm sorry, I joined this late because I was busy on something else. So I'm Director of Research and Innovation Development at Leeds University. And I'm doing a lot of work with colleagues in IT, and a lot of what I've heard is a very similar story. So we are developing a research IT strategy, because we know we need to upskill our capacity, infrastructure and resources, everything from high performance compute to data management, storage, server requirements, all of that. And we're going through a big piece of work to transform that. It's an interesting co-development process. We are working with colleagues in the States, and I think there is an environment where in Leeds where we are trying to get services working more effectively together, and a bit less of them and us and more of how do we all work together to deliver a high quality service to our academic and student community. So I think, work in progress, I would say, but similar pain, I think, through various stages of this process that I'm hearing from some of you.
It's really great to hear, refreshing to hear that. And that is on a project basis, I suppose. One of the things, I'll flash the brochure again, Smart Campus. And Smart Campus should apply to everybody. Everybody's got a thing that Smart Campus can serve a purpose for, whether you're estates, space management, research and innovation, IT. Smart Campus, is this an estates problem or is it an IT problem? Who owns that project? Or should it be everybody? Should it be head of student experience? I don't know. Who do you think should own the Smart Campus challenge? Is there a Smart Campus challenge? Does anybody recognize the benefit of a smart campus?
It's the business driver, Andy. Who owns the business driver ultimately? I think that's where it's got to come from. So teams will work together to deliver that, right? So, so estates and IT teams and student service teams or whatever, they all need to work together to deliver that. But there has to be executive sponsorship somewhere to actually drive it and say, this is where we want this to go. Without that, you're just not going to get anywhere.
That's my experience, Kevin, as well. As we speak to people about Smart Campus, there's a lot of appetite, particularly from IT. People in IT can understand what technology can do. It has to be a senior level engagement for people to understand that this is a large project and it is a collaboration, that it can inform change right across the business. But it's not one single department on its own. And it's not IT in my experience. I think it needs to come from above that.
Sandy, yes, our director of IT for digital technology, but basically IT. He's writing the university digital strategy, and for him, it's really hard to say this isn't about technology, because digital isn't about technology. It's about people and culture. It just happens to be technology delivers it, but trying to frame it in a way that the non-technical people across the organization understand this is about how their people behave and how those people interact, and the data behind that rather than the technology itself is really, really quite difficult. And it's taken quite a long time to try and get that focus and acceptance up at those levels. That it's going to cost a lot of money, but the money is about educating people, because people are digital, not really technology. Technology just delivers it. It's the people behind it that's the important bit.
I think it is a cultural shift. I think that's important. And I don't think that we in the commercial industry help. If you go to what used to be IP Expo, which is all about digital transformation these days, I attended a couple of times before lockdown, and it's all about moving things to the cloud. Well, that's not digital transformation. It's not just moving things to the cloud. Digital transformation is far more than that. I think there is a cultural transformation to go through as well. But as we've discussed here, it's what the data can do for you. That's when it becomes smart, and every department can benefit from more data to inform future decisions. Kerry, sorry, I think you were going to say something.
No, not particularly. I suppose the only thing I would say from a Leeds perspective, absolutely, digital transformation is led from the executive team. And, my boss, the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, is leading research IT, because exactly as Kevin said, it's IT enabled, but it's for research. So you've got to position it the right way. And then we're also doing all the planning around the cultural piece. So how do we upskill different members of the community to cost and price, and build in appropriate research IT resource requests into future funding applications to enable more financially sustainable and also more carbon sustainable approaches to delivering a smarter system. So yeah, it only works if the whole system's working together. I can't claim we've got it right. We're just trying to work together to develop the strategy and implement it to get it right.
So the worst people in the commercial sector, though, if I'm honest, are the people that create these pictures of like campuses and say how it can be digital and different experiences. You know,
June, quick, change your backdrop. I think you're right. I think there is a bit much of that, and you know, we also hear things like AI, where everybody talks about AI as something that is just going to change the world, and yet when you drill down into things, AI is an enabler. But the smart campus, you're right, we make it look like it's one great big simple job to do, and it's generally greenfield. Actually, it's a little bit more difficult than that. And you've got to think about the business drivers, as you said. Is the business driver just to get digital stuff? Is it about efficiency? Actually, for the most part, we see that the best business drivers for smart campus are twofold: they're sustainability and experience. The more informed you are, the better you can make the experience for the user. You know, we talked earlier on about reallocating spaces, ensuring that there's certain power where you need to have power, ensuring that the right devices are available in the places, helping students to be reminded to drop in at the library to return a book rather than getting a fine. You know, all of these kind of things are very good, but actually sustainability is the biggest driver that we see for Smart Campus. Reducing unnecessary costs, maximizing use of the resources that you have, turning off power in rooms where you don't need the lights and power on because there's nobody in there. And all of these things are informed by the data that you can gather once you can see, once you can monitor, locate, you know, who's where, what's going on in which of the spaces. Is that Kay and Ayla, I'm thinking now about yourselves. You know, you came to this thinking about space management. I wonder how this is going to unfold because we're going to start talking about IT. Are those things that you've thought about in the past? Have you thought about yourselves as part of a smart campus or digital campus strategy in your roles?
I think we include that as part of our roles because we do the estate master planning. So that's one of our jobs. So obviously we are looking at all of the carbon initiatives and sustainability initiatives as part of that. But then we'll bring another team into the group, into the project group to deliver on those deliverables. So we wouldn't do it ourselves. Just going back a little bit to the communication between sections. I mean, it's vital that you have that. We try really hard to plug our IT services into every project as it gets going. I think one of the difficulties we have is that project meetings will go on for several hours. There might be two or three a week, and people just don't have always the time to sit in those meetings and digest what's going off. And then, you know, they might miss one and then suddenly everything's a surprise. And I think that's one of the issues that we have. It's keeping people engaged and focused on the end goal. When it comes down to the smart buildings, we will say that we've got a couple of smart buildings because they've got full BMS systems in them. They are monitored. They are talking to us all the time, telling us about the consumables that are going through it, the utilities that are going through it, so we can see where things are ebbing and flowing. We don't do anything with that information. That's just sat there. And that's a shame, you know, that's a trick that we're absolutely missing. To actually do something with it means we've got to put a lot more investment into it. And I think that's there's got to be a balance somewhere between what these are going to cost the institution overall, what we're going to gain back from them. And I'm not sure we've got that piece of work right yet.
I think it's quite common to have piecemeal parts of smart buildings. You may be surprised to hear, so we're part of Vinci, and Vinci have Vinci Construction, Vinci Facilities, and Axians, the ICT branch. And actually in one of our offices in France, quite a number, but one of our offices in France particularly, all three of us are located in the same office, and yet all three of us have a different opinion on smart buildings. Because you will have in the estates department at your universities, you'll hire builders to build you a facility, you know, whether it's a halls of residence or it's a new teaching facility, whatever. And they'll put their own building management system in there, and it'll be one that meets specification, possibly to minimum requirements, but it meets specification. And then the people would operate it. They've got to operate numerous different buildings, and they will all be built by different people, and they've probably all got different BMS systems. And then you've got the IT people that, as Alex mentioned earlier on, will be asked finally to see what they can do with that BMS system so that it could be seen by somebody that needs to manage it somewhere else. So you'll have multitude of different smart buildings. My argument when I had the discussions with the Vinci team over in France is you've got to think about the education sector as unique, because when we build a building and we manage a building and then we manage it ongoing, it's for one job only. It's for a university. It's not going to be repurposed and reoccupied by somebody else. And so, thinking about a more cohesive strategy, perhaps this is, raising the conversation up to the smart campus that rolls down into every new build development that you do, having a common strategy that will deliver a common standard so that you can operate it in the same way that suits your sustainability targets, that makes it easily operable, and then starts to provide the data that is cohesive across the whole university estate that can inform change. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, Philip. I think you've just actually hit the nail on the head inadvertently. I mean, your point there was when you're doing new developments, those things are very easy to include. Our estate portfolio has got a lot of very traditional, antiquated Victorian properties in it. They're not easy or conducive to transform into different purposes, yet we are still operating academic departments out of them. So yeah, where we've got new developments going forward, absolutely, and those targets are setting the parameters of the build before it even gets to the project side. We'll have those design deliverables built into that project. When we've got old buildings, that, quite frankly, much more of a challenge, especially when they're listed, especially when they're grade 2 star listed, and you can't do very much with them at all. So, we've got that conundrum as well. And I think lots of institutions will be in exactly the same position.
And you'll certainly have that in Leeds, Kerry. I'm not sure so much about yourselves in Plymouth, Alex. Do you have some old listed buildings that you have to provide connectivity to?
Yeah, we've got, our Vice Chancellor lives in a big grand Victorian house, and there's a street. So yeah, we got new builds, war-torn, rebuilt buildings, the complete mixture, and trying to put wireless access points in those buildings, and containment everywhere, and actually, this is not a suspended floor, it's floorboards. How are we going to run cable in here? Yeah, is a delightful challenge. I think what the positive we've got to a little bit is that we're just aiming, at least for the new projects, to have some stuff so that we do something. Like for many years, I think we just went, well, we can't do it everywhere, so we just won't do it at all. And at least, those are houses. We've literally converted what were living rooms into offices. At least they are slightly smaller spaces. Once we then tackle the 11-story buildings and we say, well, actually, we know what's going on in there, we can make it energy efficient within a 2-story sort of terraced house. Yes, we may not have done the best with it and know what's going on in there, but I guess carbon wise, energy wise, we're trying to impact some of it, and maybe the bigger buildings are not the smaller ones currently.
It's a tough one. I know Kevin in Reading, particularly, and forgive me, I just don't know the other university campuses as well, but in Reading particularly, I know you certainly do think about the carbon footprint and the efficiency of all the buildings that you use here, and that rolls into the estates plan as well. Does that happen in other universities where they think about, okay, this building over here is a grade G, we're not going to be able to do anything about that, we'll just limit its use, and we'll make sure that we're putting our space development into buildings that are more efficient? Does that sort of happen?
We're starting it. So we've, I guess, I say it's a positive thing. It's been a right pain in the backside there recently. We've added, so we send things to what we call our capital planning committee to sign off any building project, network projects, IT, any kind of related things. And within that business case, you've never had to mention anything to do with environment, green credentials, carbon. It wasn't a factor. It was all about money and such thing. They redid that document that you have to complete in January this year, and it does now have a carbon section. So I'm starting the process of, we're going to replace our wireless access points and our switches. And it's a little bit troublesome for the first time, because I think they put that section in so they want everything now to be greener. And it's like, well, actually, when we replace network switches that didn't have very much PoE, and now we need ones with PoE, no, they're not more energy efficient, and no, we're not installing less of them. They've got some examples in there, and they're like, well, you've replaced a 200-seater computing lab with 75. Well, we've got more students. We don't need to lower the number of PCs. We need to increase them. And they sort of, I think they're having an interesting conversation in those meetings, going, oh, we've put this green section in, but actually most of the cases that come in aren't actually being greener. So we should reject them.
Which we did something really interesting in about 7 years ago now. We actually started a complete campus refresh of our estate, and the network manager at the time took the decision that, well, because he didn't really want to go around patching things all the time, he wanted to have every single data port across campus patched in if it was never going to be used, just in case. So we went and essentially tripled our footprint across the estate. 2/3 of those ports are not in use, and they're just sat there in old cupboards because the buildings were built before comms rooms and required all those sort of things. And now they're generating too much heat, and there's other complaints being created from the heat that's been generated, all the noise. So we're actually going to start going around and picking all these devices, and then going back down to what is the kind of the bare minimum. Rooms don't change that often, and it will. That's one way that we can like show how IT are trying to help achieve that greener position without having to have a lot of money to spend on something. And then when it comes to conversations later, we can say, well, we did that over there. Or can we have a bit of money to do this over here, sort of thing. A bit of back scratching, but it's a fun conversation, especially as one of my patching guy. He's in his late 60s, so he just loves going around campus. He's got that knowledge, and he's like, you can't. I put all these in. You can't then take them all out. It's like, yeah, no, we are sorry. He's like, but then so he starts stashing them in like places that he's found on campus. It's like secret cupboards he's got just so we can't take them out or hide them, or take them away. It's all good fun.
See, I feel so. Our previous generation, in what we put in 2005, was exactly like that. And I almost feel as though we jumped the gun and became greener when we refreshed in 2016 by saying, oh, well, actually, we don't need half of these things. Let's take them out and sort of patch to the bare minimum. And we had sort of like, right, that's it, with sort of like 10% capacity, and it's minus 1 or 2 locations. We've sort of been right on the edge, although there's occasionally where you're like, we've patched 47 and 48 ports. I hope nobody wants to move in and patch something else. But yeah, now we're at a stage where we can't remove anymore. And if anything, we need to put some more in. Like, not ideal. But
so I'm really keen to hear. We talked a lot about IT and how IT affects things like sustainability, smart campus, and so on and so on. I'm really keen to hear your opinion, Kay, Ayla, on some of the challenges that you've got that IT might be able to enable change to, or assist you in meeting those challenges, or actually just broader. What are the kind of challenges that you see that we perhaps don't consider in space management? Come up with some of those challenges. Maybe we can think of some ideas that might be able to help from the IT perspective.
I think the main challenge we have is workplace culture. So it's not really about the IT connectivity, it's not about the space side of it, it's about how people are expecting to work. And that's not necessarily thinking about the hybrid conundrum or the return back from the pandemic, because that's all got a little bit confused in the mix. That's really about people having an expectation that, as an academic, they'll get their own office, they'll get to go out for tea breaks 2-3 times a day, they'll see students for 2 hours a week. and that's how they will act. And in this day and age, that's just not, it's not something we can sustain. You know, we've got students now paying lots of money to come to the institution. They expect a level of service from that institution. They expect to be able to see their academics, which means that their academics have got to be on site. And that's one of the challenges we have. We have professional services departments whose job it is to deal with students all the time, who will only open their doors for 2 or 3 hours a day. A student expects to be seen whenever they want to be seen. And let's face it, if you were paying that money, you would as well. So I'm not sure that IT services can solve that problem, or space management can. That is really about the workplace culture. And I think that we are a research intensive university, like what Kerry will be. You know, we're a Russell group, that the expectations are very different from the Russell groups to what the post-92s are. We work very differently. So we definitely have that challenge to get over. Anything we can do to make the place nice with the IT side of it is fantastic. If it helps bring people in and it helps us get that buy-in from them to change, but it's really about that for us.
And do you think that is something that's systemic of Russell Group? Is it the kind of academics that you have that are obviously valuable to you because they help you to gain the right research grants and carry out the right research projects, and students want to go there because they want to be taught by that academic, and so you just kind of have to put up with it? Or is it something that you feel is gradually changing over time as well?
I'd like to say it was changing, because I'd like to think that the young academics that are coming through the system are different because they've been brought up in a different generation. But I think the truth is, and Ale, I don't know if you feel the same, it's systemic. So we literally self-perpetuate this sense of self-worth within our academics to say, actually, yes, you are. It's like the consultant world in the NHS. You know, the consultants are gods. Well, our academics are our gods. And, you know, do anything against that and you get shot down, because we're an institution run by academics for academics. We don't run as a business. And that's one of our biggest failings, because we are a business. We're a charitable status business, but we're making a lot of money. Yet we don't act like a business.
Enterprise on a shoestring.
A business that's set up to serve the customer, and the customer kind of, it is very different, isn't it, in the Russell Group institutions, where you know, to gain a place in that university is much harder than it might be in a post-92 universities. To get access to those academics is a little bit harder. You've got a lot of people competing for the spaces, and they kind of accept the way that they're treated, I guess. You know, not that they should. I mean, you're right. They're paying an awful lot of money. Both UK and overseas students are paying an awful lot of money, and they shouldn't have to accept that. I wonder whether there is a way that IT can help. You know, are these visits to the academic, I wouldn't say truly necessary? Is it only the academic that can serve that? Or there are other things that you can do? I mean, I'm thinking about now more collaboration. You know, I visited a school very recently that absolutely blew my mind, but it was a school with no teachers, and had no exams, and everything was peer reviewed, and there were no lessons, and it was a self-learning school. You were given a task and you went away and learnt it for yourself. And so I'm thinking here, where a student perhaps wants access to an academic because they got a problem, they didn't understand something, they need something to be reviewed again with that academic. But if there were a more collaborative culture, would they help each other? Or would there be more self-learning environments? I don't know the answers to this. I'm just putting it out there, you know, thinking of a way that IT might be able to help. Is it the culture of the students as well, where they expect just to be able to get access to the academic, and the academic will solve their problems?
Who knows? It's probably all those things, to be honest with you. Probably all of those things. But I think if you go back 10, 15 years, you know, there were a lot less students in this institution. Probably better student-staff ratios. We'd probably have more staff to each student, and the students probably got more time with the staff. I think now it has changed, and the staff certainly at our institution are very much, well, hang on a second, I've got this cohort of students who are, responsible to me, but I only want to be available for a few hours a week to them. I want to be able to sit and do my research in peace. I don't want to be disturbed. And, that is very much the mindset of lots of our academics. And it's how the institutions run. So we will go around buildings and you'll come to an office door and it will say office hours 1 till 2 on a Tuesday. You think, right, okay, well, where are you the rest of the week? What are you doing? It's bizarre, but it's how we are. We've always been like that.
And so access to those resources, and let's call them resources because I don't know, they're going to be all different types of people. They're going to be academics, they're going to be student services. Are they, you say that you walk around and you'll see a notice on the door to say that they're closed 12 till, they're only open at certain times and so on. How informed are the students of those kind of conditions? How informed are the students of availability and working hours and that sort of thing?
I would imagine that they are informed of that when they've started the institution's course and they go to find their academic. And they come to that door and they're faced with that problem. That's what I would imagine. But, we're not in the department, so I can't speak really.
I mean, contact time has always been really difficult for students. It does depend on the academics. Some academics really harness the student contact time and see the mutual value of that has. And then you get some who just want to sit themselves away, do their little research, occasionally do about teaching to get paid. There's the whole spectrum between. I think historically there has been a lot of that. Of course, academics are not hiding away in their offices. Only hours are certain available. You have to go on, put your name on a list on the door to maybe get a place and to see them. But during COVID, the organisation changed a lot of that here. So they kind of forced the academics to pick up Microsoft bookings as a way to actually book slots and diaries, because we moved everything to Exchange Online, the same tendency of staff and students. Well, all students can then see staff diaries, and so at least free busy. So they were more opportunistic in terms of when they went to try to find them.
Goodness me, all students can see staff diaries?
Not the detail, just a block. Don't know that, Andy. So don't start telling your daughter that. So she starts spreading rumors. Okay,
just gonna let her know. Go and see Kevin, Daisy. Look, you'll be able to see his diary online.
But they've actually really kind of try and change that culture of the academics need to be available for the students to have that contact time, because that's why they are paying to come to the institution, to actually learn off those academics and not just in a lecture scenario where they're being pushed information, but actually to have that back and forth piece. So that's how you learn by conversation. You don't learn by reading, or not just.
I think you made it. One of the suggestions you made earlier on, where we were talking about location and talking about some enhanced services you can deliver to a student, helping a student to return a book because they're just going past it, helping a student to take advantage of a discount in the coffee shop.
I think lecture down, is that what you're going to say?
Well, no, what I was going to say was that there are different rewards for different people. And, perhaps this is the thing here. Perhaps it's to do with the way that the academics are rewarded, incentivized, if you like, to have contact time with the students. If you can start to calendar, if you can start to make it obvious to the students when people are available, if you can integrate that kind of stuff into an app, so that at the touch of a button the student can find out when the next available slot might be to speak to their academic, and the academic is somehow rewarded for that engagement time with a student. Students love anything that we suggest to them that's got gamification built in. Absolutely love it. I was talking to this school where there were no teachers and there were no lessons. They get points for peer reviewing their peers' work, and they basically have to spend credits to have their work reviewed. And the whole concept of gamification here, to try and help people feel rewarded for their contribution. I'm not saying necessarily so that some old professors here are going to be that interested in earning some credits. That's not going to work necessarily. But finding a way of bringing the two requirements together. One person says, no, I want to concentrate on my research, and one person says, oh no, I want access to an academic. Making it more freely available and more free to happen. Perhaps IT could have a contribution.
Gamification is interesting, but I think it's very generational. The sub 25-year-olds are kind of going to be a lot more up for it, than those old, and that generally, and that's not stereotyping. It's just It's exactly.
I'm not taking any offence at all for being old, Kevin.
Well,
That's all right,
I think we're all over 25 on here, so I hope I haven't offended anyone too much. But but no, it's but I think there is that focus around it. It's just a different, the amount of kids of our young adults that they'll come to uni with or have phones from the age of 8 now is ridiculous, mad. I mean, when I was young, I would never dream of parents being able to contact me 24/7. I'd hate that concept, so or very attractively. But it's normal now for that's what a lot of you
locate.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's based. It's interesting. I think it's trying to find that hook, and the way you do it is actually by league tables and academic value that they're given to the organisation. Then they see themselves.
You think we should score our lecturers like we do our Uber drivers?
Well, you kind of do by your NSS scores. You kind of do by the exam results you get. If you get a class that does really badly in exams, and then there's going to be a reason for that, right? And so it's not directly relatable to one thing, but it's all part of the experience that people are paying for now, and they expect that service that they're paying for. It isn't a grant system anymore; it's a service culture, which we need to change the behaviours to align to that.
In fairness, the institutions are all surveyed by the students every year. We're all marked by the students every year in the student survey. And a lot of the dissatisfaction comes out of that process around contact towers and access to people, facilities. So, we use that as one of our benchmarking tools, what we do with the survey results. I mean, the other part with the academics, of course, is the REF process that goes forward every 5 years. And, that's just like a Premier League supermarket for academics.
It does look like it.
It's absolutely like that. And we have people come on a whim and go on a whim purely because of that. And we hold hostage to fortune for it as well. So, there's lots of that going off.
You surprised me there, actually, given your location and given the appetite for working with Industry 4.0. You surprised me. I actually thought that you'd be more static in that respect.
No, we have the problem is when you're successful in a research area, everybody wants you. So, you take your kudos to whichever institution you go to. And therefore, if we went to Professor John Smith and said, sorry, Professor John Smith, you're going to lose your office this week, he's going to turn around to us and say, no, I'm not, because I'm going to go to a different institution if you don't give me this, that, and the other. And that's what they do.
We find our noisiest academics are the people that brought in a lot of money in the past, who now bring in nothing, but still think there's a really important person. We can't get rid of them.
So we've talked a lot about how IT can help estates, how estates can inform IT, how we can start to work together, we can collaborate, we can inform with data, I suppose, is the important factor. And I started off by asking about what the network would do for the transformation, what part the network has to play. And we've talked about some interesting topics there, like location-based services, things like Bluetooth and how that can improve accuracy, how we can collect things like location, time, and identity, and how that might affect change in space management, student engagement, student experience, some other things that we talked about there as well. I did mention AI earlier on, and I noticed, Kevin, you put a great response in the chat. It's not AI, it's ML.
Jamie hates me. Jamie hates me when I say that, but it's kind of true. There's no such thing as AI. It's just machines learning and adapting based on the data they got available to them. I know Jamie's going to probably shoot me for saying that, but again, but it's I don't know.
I suppose that if you think about the two things, the difference between a human and a robot is a human has got freedom of thought and they can bring emotion into it. And you're right, AI will analyze some data, learn from change in that data, and then spit you something back that should inform change. Are these things that you're starting to see around space management? I know there are applications that help, and maybe they're AI enabled. Are you seeing those kind of things for you as well?
I don't think I've seen anything like that, to be honest. I know we've had leaflets sent to us regarding these reception boards. So you can walk into a reception area and you don't see a person anymore. You see a board, which is a physical, like a holographic person giving you reception details. So we've been sent information on that, but we've not introduced anything like that yet.
Goodness. Perhaps you could get a holographic academic.
We've probably got quite a few.
There you go. That'll get it fixed.
In fact, universities don't tend to get rid of people for technology automation. We don't tend to make that many people redundant, if you like, for those sort of things. So I think it's an obvious target to that sort of capability university, but I think it's always going to be a hard sell. I think people always like to see people in an organization, particularly in campus environments anyway.
Without a doubt, I think I see the use of AI and ML particularly. I mean, you've got it in MIST, okay, where you've got a feedback loop there where you can ask set questions in natural language and it will go and discover some things for you. And that's, I think, is where you'll see the most benefit from it, because it will stop labor intensive tasks. So it's not saying I don't need labor anymore. It's saying I can speed up the response that I would otherwise get through a manual intervention, and it can inform far more than you could do. You're looking at such huge data sets, a person would never tackle it, and so that's where I think.
Yeah, well, I'm using it. I'm going to look at it as a way to actually reduce the cost of support as well. To actually push the capability down to the service desk, so which are a lot cheaper than third line network engineers. And have the reduce that cost down, and you get this faster response and a better response, hopefully, because you're going directly to the engagement windows a lot shorter. So there's lots of benefit to having that capability that as well. It de-skills it, if you like, which sounds like a bad thing, but actually it's a better customer experience.
Yeah, always faster response time, isn't it? That's the most important thing. And Alex, are you starting to use any of those technologies?
So no, but it is, what we're aiming to do. We've got a certain size IT team. If anything, we struggle to recruit down where we are the right technical level of people we want. Our network team is of a certain size. It's over the past few years, we had a separate network team. It became a network and telephony team. Now it's become an infrastructure team, and there's almost there's a set of people, and they're responsible for if those people all went off, the university could fall apart in seconds. But nobody, it all just works in the background, so nobody really cares about it. So we can't add to that. But our service desk are crying out for, and the way our traditional networking happens, where things are a bit more IP based and this and that, and we maybe have a level of going, well, actually, we really don't want a second line or service desk engineer currently, making network port changes or doing whatever. But the more that we can have, service desk staff able to, ask questions and be like, right, this answer those questions earlier, quick fix that, and enable the third line guys to be getting on with
smarter stuff that they should be.
Proactive stuff. We're very much a reactive team. We're constantly waiting for something to have failed, and we're working to put out that fire, and not fireproofing the building to go, right, well, this is okay now, it's a lot more stable.
Nice analogy.
We've got plenty of service desk engineers, and as we did an Into the Cloud project before COVID, a couple of years before, 2017 or so. So 85% of our services live up in the cloud. SaaS as much as possible. So the service desk deal with a load of stuff. The network is still where that problem occurs, where somebody says, "Oh, I've moved from here to there." There'll always be a physical requirement to go out and patch a socket, because we don't flood wire everything. But at least if they
changes, it's logical changes.
Yeah, if it's still that option of, or they've swapped out their PC, if they still, if we had a bit more automation in there, a bit of role-based access, if that existed, and actually somebody in finance could swap out a PC, but they still logged into it and say, well, this is you. It's not that it's tied to a MAC address. So actually, it's going to take a period of time, and Easter time currently, so the team are probably down to 1 or 2 people. It's not going to be a quick fix that somebody, as the lady said, everything's Wi-Fi at this bottom. They just expect everything to work. That's what our staff expect. They just go, well, you've given me a new laptop. You must know that I'm swapping this out, but the process doesn't quite all tally up. They've got their brand new laptop on their desk, but actually they need to plug it in to be able to log into it. And now we've given them a brick for a period of time until maybe a day or 2 days later, somebody clears that port security. Then they can log into their device, and then they start that process. And it's just lost a load of.
We're certainly finding quite a lot of people thinking about automation now to speed up those repetitive tasks, to improve workflow. We do a lot of work around that. I mean, I'm sure June will talk to you about it, Alex, in time, but we do get involved. We look at building a single source of truth to start off with, and then once you've got that, you can start to automate things and you can build some great workflows and integrations. But I hear that. We're coming to a close, and I wanted to just give time to everybody. I want to ask everybody, has today met your objectives, if you came here with any? Has it been good? What would you like to hear discussed more, and what can we do for the future is really my question to all. We're going to open the floor.
I'm unmuted, so I'll go for it. It's been really good for me that occasionally, you sit in your own institute and you go, I bet other people's IT and estates department work really well together, and they don't have any of these problems that we have, and they get loads of money and they can just do whatever. Wouldn't it be great if we went and worked somewhere else? But to actually hear that, and especially having the other side of the coin, I have regular battles with my space manager person. We don't have enough space management people. We've got like a team of 1.5, and I feel really sorry for him that the jigsaw he has to manage. So on a sort of a relationship basis, we get along really well, but I get massively frustrated when he just throws bits.
Alex, is that Andy?
Andy Blank, yes.
So we know Andy.
So there you are. You can say I said nice things about him. I definitely said that we had a good relationship, and that I wasn't always frustrated with him.
We'll write that down for you.
Yeah, but he is a team of 1.5, and I do genuinely feel bad for him that he just gets this has to happen, and it's nice to see the other side of the coin without just hearing him say it, where I go, well, you're just saying that because he complains about me because I say, well, I need 3 days to be able to do that because I can't magic things. So no, it's been really good and a useful conversation for me, and good to know where other places are going. Where to go next, I don't know, because I don't know that in my own brain yet. Where I'd like us to go.
Please bring ideas for the next forum, because we're going to repeat this, however regularly people want it, whether it's once a quarter, twice a year, whatever, but bring ideas, what you'd like us to talk about, and we'll try and bring people along to these things that might be able to, bring some fresh insights. I can certainly bring other customers. We can bring people from abroad if that's what you need to come and talk about what the experiences that they've had. I say the one I visited was very much a greenfield campus, and so it's not very reflective of a lot of the things that we do in the UK. But there's some smart initiatives that we carried out elsewhere. But I would like to do that. Other people, please, your feedback on today.
So Andy, did I hear that you're going to fly to Portugal to that university to take us around there? That's very kind of you.
I'm not allowed to do that though, Kevin. It's not over 50, but it's over £50. We're you know what? If you want to come out to Lisbon and see Nova, Kevin, I'm sure we can make that happen.
I actually, to fact, I am quite interested in seeing what they've done over there, and I know our states team would find it interesting as well. So I think actually it would be good to organise that. Joking aside, but
yeah, you are welcome, and there is a blog coming out soon. You'll read on that.
Maybe sort of September time when November starts to turn, it might cheer us up a little bit. I don't know. Again, no good. But no, I find it useful to sort of kind of see what sort of hearing what sort of Kay's world's like, and Alex's similar pains, challenges, conversations we like as we do. I mean, it's not all bad. I think a lot of the frustrations come out in these conversations, but there's some good stuff that we do together as functions work as well. And I think a lot of the institution demands cause these frustrations rather than the actual functions themselves going out to cause them. So it's a sector challenge, I think, and I'm genuinely quite interested to understand a little bit more about how the IT network is at Sheffield, because it sounds like you have fixed their problems, but you might find the IT team behind you are scurrying around like this chicken trying to fix things.
Like a swan.
Yeah. Yeah,
well,
no,
I think
indeed.
now that we know what the format of these are, then we'll certainly try and make sure that our IT are connecting for the next one. Because whilst I've been listening to you, Kevin and Alex talk, I'm thinking, well, if this is our IT guys feel about what we're doing, we really do need to be talking more often with them, although we do try to. It's just getting people together. And I think the level of frustration at our institution is more around investment and getting the cash to do what we want to do, because we want to be one of these all singing or dancing universities. We want to have all this data available for us to make informed decisions, but getting the investment to actually put that in place is another issue.
Well,
So
there is
really
a gentleman, I don't know if you know Gareth Nichol.
Yep.
Yeah, so Gareth has come in really to try and see if he can define a strategy going forwards. And I know we've had quite a few conversations, and you've got a consultant engaged at the moment to try and build a strategy. And these kind of things should be taken into account. So, I'd be going to him if I were you and saying, now, by the way, just thought of these ideas that we had earlier on. Make sure you're including that in there.
Yeah. And certainly, I mean, you know more about what Gareth's doing than what we know then, obviously, because I didn't know we've got consultants involved in putting a strategy in place. So, and that's where the disconnect is. We work on the estate strategy. That is what our role is, to decide the future of the institution's buildings. But I wouldn't have a clue what Gareth was doing on the other side. So that is definitely a disconnect that we need to try and fix.
But a little bit of a story there about our Wi-Fi refresh piece. So we were talking to Miss before Juniper bought them, acquired them, and then continuous conversations. And we're working out all this financial kind of model and how we're going to fund it, because it's not a small amount of money. And so we took this whole leasing package option, how we can OPEX costs to take it out of our budget. We took it to the board for approval, and the state's kind of grass. Sorry, and our CFO, who's on the project board, said, "I love the concept of what you're trying to do here. We'll pay for it our capital." Okay. So, yeah,
brilliant.
So I think if you get the message the right way, sometimes even if the money's not there, it suddenly can appear.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I do remember doing that.
How have you enjoyed today, Ayla?
Yeah, really good. I've taken a lot from it, and as Kay says, we've got a lot of questions for our own IT department now, so the cogs are whirring away. So.
Oh dear, I shouldn't have said I know them. They're going to come back to me now.
Not in a bad way, just about how, like Kay said, we can work better together, and just us understanding things better, and likewise from their point of view. So yeah, it's hopefully quite exciting to go forward.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you all very much for joining, and hopefully you enjoy the goodie bags that came along with it. We've all probably got to drop off for 2 o'clock meetings now, but we'll have a little bit of feedback afterwards. So any opportunity that you want to say anything, then please do continue to feedback, and look forward to seeing you all next time.
See you guys soon. I'll follow up.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.